Our chairman, council members, fellow HR professionals, good morning and welcome to our webinar series this morning, where we'll be touching on the role of the HRBP vis-a-vis employee care. Now, never before have we experienced such a huge crisis, and nearly every major crisis over the past 8 decades has made one thing clear: people need leaders to provide a clear path forward. When I look back at 2007 financial crisis, the business world looked to CFOs to save their companies. The 2019 pandemic presents a different challenge and highlights the role of another corporate function, often unfairly dismissed as soft. Never before have CEOs needed a strong, competent HRBP or chief people officers, as we are otherwise known, because these people must keep employees healthy, maintain their morale, oversee a vast remote working experiment, and as firms retrench, consider when and how to lay off the workers. The role of HR has never been more strategic, and as we strike a balance between the organization's HR purpose and the bottom line. So to help us unpack this strategic role, please welcome Mr. Fred Gituku, who has 16 years HR experience across various sectors. He is currently the Human Resources Manager of Vivo Energy Kenya Limited and a board member of the company. Prior to this, he was a Chief Human Resources Officer for Telecom Orange Kenya and has previously held various strategic roles. He was, in 2012, nominated as one of the Business Daily's top 40 under 40. So we couldn't have picked a better person to unpack this. So karibu sana, Fred. The platform is now yours.
Thank you very much, Rose, and thank you for that introduction. I am honored to have been invited to share a few thoughts concerning a topic that has affected us all in one way or the other. It is positive that IHRM has arranged these forums to enable us share thoughts and ideas with each other and consider how best to cope with the prevailing circumstances. So thank you, Irene, thank you, Rose, and the team. Now I hope to spend the next 20 or 25 minutes sharing a few thoughts on the topic of how we might demonstrate care for our employees while still minding the priorities of our businesses and organizations. These are uncertain times, and therefore it cannot be business as usual. Our lives have been accosted by an unseen enemy who has held us all at ransom, regardless of class, creed, caliber, virtually any human attribute or demographic. Our businesses and organizations are now choking and suffocating in the fumes of a sudden economic downturn, and it is likely that they will struggle for a while longer, grappling with a new set of dilemmas. Our profession, HR, has on its lap a brand new set of challenges. We have always known that we need to balance the needs of the business and of our people. But this season, that balance is much more complicated, a lot more fragile. Other professions and colleagues are looking to us. Their eyes are trained on our responses and instincts. One moment, we are chief people officers, and the next moment, we are chief pandemic officers. How do we show up and make a difference in these uncertain times? How can we be counted among those who are helping businesses and organizations and their people to cope? What I will do is share a few thoughts, hopefully inspire some questions in your mind, hopefully inspire dialogue and continued conversations around this topic so that we can collectively find the best ways of coping with what has now become the new normal for us. I want to share it in 3 parts. First of all, the business. How do we support the business in times like this, because we won't have the people to support or to care about if we, first of all, do not have the business. So how do we effectively make our contribution and support the business in the prevailing difficult circumstances? Let's talk about basics, and everybody's putting basics in place, but I do not want to make any assumptions. I want to say we need to, first of all, put basics in place. You have done your bit to ensure that there's hygiene in the office. You've ensured that there's hand and respiratory hygiene in the office and your homes. You've sanitized workplaces. You've taken precautions around the cleaners who come to your office, the people who help to make beverage in the office, if you've got them. And you've encouraged your employees to follow the government guidelines that have been issued over time. So you've put the basics in place. That includes enabling them to leave in good time so that they may adhere to the curfew that is now in place and the restriction of movement that has been added to that. It also involves you in the procurement of masks now that they are needed, and finding ways of getting them transport, those who have to come to work, to find them transport, to assist them to come to work, because not everybody is driving. So you've put basics in place. But I think there's another thing I want to talk about. I want to say that we need to appreciate our businesses. Yes, of course, we can't support businesses that we do not understand very well, but now we are not understanding the business as we have understood it in the past. How has your business been impacted? And people who are listening are coming from different sectors. How has your sector been impacted? There are differences. Some sectors have been hit harder than others. I do not expect that those in the medical profession are going through the same kind of business environment as those in hospitality and aviation. So where are you? And what are your peculiar challenges? And while we are at it, what are your peculiar opportunities as well? What is the impact of managing credit in your organization today? How are you managing cash flows in these times? What about demands and supply forecasting and planning? There were plans in January. Nobody foresaw this in January. Many of us thought this is a Chinese problem and it will remain in China. Some of us even used to say, so long as you're black, you're unlikely to get this kind of thing. This kind of home has only repose in those who are white. Shame. How are you dealing with your stock? There are people who are in businesses that deal with stock. You had made plans about supply. You had made plans about demand. What about Forex exposure? Some of you are dealing internationally. How does this impact your business? And therefore, how does it impact how we approach the business as HR people? We've got to ask ourselves these questions. And I do not ask these questions so that I provide answers here or I give a prescription here. I'm asking these questions so that we may think about them and see how best to approach the help we give business in our respective sectors, in our respective businesses, without assuming that there's a broad brush that can fit everybody. The other thing that many of us will have done is ensuring that there's a business continuity plan, that you have identified the very critical resources in terms of talent that you have, and that you have also identified their backups, and in some cases, even the backups of backups. The reason I say this is recently somebody said that there's nobody who is immune to this virus, and as I said, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't mean that if you're senior, you're unlikely to come across it and you're likely to wrestle with it and win. We don't know. So have you determined who is critical and who is their backup and who is their backup, if possible, depending on the size of your business and nature of your business as well, or organization? And then there's a whole question of who's going to work from home, who is going to work from the office, who has to go to the office. And those questions you're able to determine based on your business as well. Now, sometimes leaders want to be in the office throughout, and here we've also had to say that, look, we also must participate in the shift system where we are not unduly exposing the people who've been identified as critical resources with their backups. So if you're doing any kind of shift work, then you're saying that when the critical resource is there, then the backup is working from elsewhere. And ensuring that that is adhered to right from the top. Now, there are people who can work from home, and those who cannot work from home. Those who are working in the office necessarily at the front lines, or people in manufacturing who've got to be touching physical things to get work going. What arrangements are we making for them in terms of safety, health, to secure their health because they've got to come to work, to secure their transport, they've got to come to work. Some companies have arranged to have Uber transport their people to work. They do not want them to get into public transport, and where they do, then they've got masks and they're focusing on their hygiene. Of course, there's always going to be an extent to which we can't insulate ourselves from this virus. It is unseen, and yes, we can take every precaution, but we cannot fully insulate ourselves against it. So there's no way of isolating yourself from the world today. And even if you went to space, it's not known how long you will need to stay there before you come back and find those who remain. Now, everyone being susceptible, those schedules need to be followed, and therefore business continuity. The question that some of us are not asking is, you also use suppliers. You've got people that you have to collaborate with to get business going. You've got cleaners coming to the office. You've got people bringing stuff to the office. You've got stakeholders that you depend on. Have you had a check on their business continuity plans? Have you requested for them? Recently, I asked the cleaning company, can you show me your BCP? You asked your medical service provider, can you show me your BCP? You know who you work with. Have you had a look at it? Or have you just been told, we are set, we are going to help you, simply because they know that you will settle their invoice? So you need to think about that, I think. The other thing is to enable colleagues to work from home. A lot has been said about this subject. I do not want to belabor it. Technology is important, and now people are discovering that desktops are portable after all. It's not just a laptop. There are many people who've taken their desktops home. Nowadays, the machinery is not as humongous as it used to be before, so we can handle it. So there's a lesson for all of us, that if you have a desktop at home, no one is going to condemn you, perhaps the way it would have been a year ago. Are you encouraging connection between leaders and their teams? How often are they having calls with them, virtual calls with them? Do they have a daily check-in? Is it certain? Or are your line managers calling people when there's a problem? Obviously, when you're upset, when a line manager is upset, something is not going well, then they are able to call an urgent meeting and lash at somebody. Are we doing it anyway, so that we keep connected to our teams and know how they are experiencing working from home, what's working, what's not working, what needs to be improved? There's serious stuff that has to be discussed on those calls, and some non-serious stuff that needs to be discussed in those calls. Obviously, you've got to talk business, you have to talk shop, but light-hearted moments are also required. Are you doing something about getting people to relax a bit also, at least virtually? There are games that could be played. I'm not here to give examples. I'm told that there are several that can be played by many people at once. And this is not where we spend all the time, but you could spend some time doing that. People are going through difficult times, and if it's pressure upon pressure, there's also going to be a breaking point that you don't want to reach. Now, it's got to be understood that meetings are not going to be perfect. We did not have a lot of induction of working from home We haven't had a lot of induction of working from home before this. This was just visited on us. So we had to start and get it going. So help people have tips, resources of how best to work from home. And more importantly, encourage them to also, in their groups or in their functions, to discuss what is working and what is not working. The best tips are going to come from the experience people are having and the knowledge they are sharing. This is where we are expected to play along with the music that's being played by somebody else, because we don't know how tomorrow is going to be. So whatever we learn today, if we can encourage people to share what's working at home and what's not working, that's fine. There are many distractions working at home, and you've seen a lot of online material telling you this is how you should do it. There are people who believe that they are okay working in their t-shirt in their bedroom. Others think that greater freedom is also necessary because no one can see you. I don't know. Not everything works for everyone, but there's sufficient resource that can help you. And also the knowledge that you get from knowing from my colleagues. I ask my colleagues, what's working? What do you find is working? What are you struggling with? What's difficult for you? And you'll be surprised. There's a lot you learn, both about working from home and those colleagues with whom you've been working for some time. The other one I want to talk about, still on the subject of supporting business, is minding the communication and behavior of our leaders. We have meetings with our leaders virtually. We are interacting with them daily. Obviously, with what's going on, I would be very surprised if your leaders are not speaking to you regularly. And I think it is very important that leaders are seen to be present. When I say present, I don't mean that they are out there being seen and being touched, but in terms of checking in with their people, having calls, having video calls, having messages being sent, or even videos themselves. Many people have all sorts of ideas about how to send messages and keep in touch with their people. That's important, being present. And also encouraging them to be forthright in these uncertain times. When they don't know something, it is okay to say we don't know. No one knew in January we would be where we are today. So saying that I don't know what's happening is okay. The other thing is that to remind them that they need to send the message that people matter most. You may take this for granted and think, well, don't we know that? But they need to remember it's people who matter most. Could it be that some of these leaders are thinking about profit at the expense of people? Could it be that there are those who have forgotten empathy instead of also thinking about, as they think about EBITDA? Are there those who are only thinking about cash flows and forgetting to think about compassion? We need to encourage them, and we've got to be the ones who are calling their bluff and encouraging them and advising them that the messages they send, both in what they say and what they don't say, in their behavior, is being taken in. Now, the other thing is that they should remain calm. At times like this, it is very easy to peddle the gospel of doom, to become evangelists of cataclysms and saying, okay, dunia iko karibu kwisha. We only have a few more days. This is a cosmic sign. Jipange. Leaders can't be saying those kind of things. They've got to be merchants of encouragement. They've got to trade in the commodity of hope, which is lacking today. We've got to encourage our leaders to trade in the commodity of hope, because people need that. When they do not have hope, they are not able to be productive in the circumstances. When they do not have hope, businesses will fail. So this is something that leaders have to do, to demonstrate calm and be people who are encouraging others and inspiring their teams to weather this storm. Now, besides the business, how do we demonstrate care for colleagues and support them during these times? First of all, and these are some of the things you will already have done, is to encourage them to take every precaution and adhere to government guidelines. That's important. We must keep on sending that message to them. Now, but we've also got to remind them the companies and businesses are not going to take responsibility for their health 100%. That is not possible. They've got to mind it. If you're distributing masks and somebody who's living with 15 people in their home, an extended family, and says that, you know, if you don't give me an extra one, I'll contract it from the other people in the house. I mean, you know, you've been in HR for some time, you know how difficult some of these conversations can be, but how far do you go? And this is where a sense of judgment comes in. I can't give you a number, but you've also got to encourage employees to take responsibility for their lives. Make sure that you're obtaining information from credible sources. World Health Organization does give useful advice. If you have a company doctor, you will find that very useful. I have benefited immensely from having a company doctor. A couple of years ago, people are asking, what does he do here? We are well. Now that question is not coming through. The other thing is, not every online piece of advice is useful. Someone told me that there was some guy on radio who was saying that he's discovered the cure for COVID. And he said that the government should give him 3 patients, and in 15 minutes, he'll have sorted their lives. That may excite some people. And it is, I think, important to remember, everyone wants to sound prophetic and capable. Not everyone is giving the information that we should be receiving. So by the time you're sending information to staff, please consider where it's coming from, so that then you are telling them what they need to hear. Now, the other thing is that, have you told them what to look out for in the event that there's a case in the office? When do you decide that now we need attention to that case? So that if somebody chokes on their saliva, everybody doesn't either run away or lynch somebody because they think this guy is now coughing, that must be a dry cough, this guy is going to die in 5 days, and this kind of thing. So we want a situation where you understand that and you're also empowering them to know this is what to look out for. The other thing is, if there's a case in your office, do you know how you will respond? Do you have people who have volunteered to help in case that happens? Do you have the gear for those kind of people? It is available. And have you spoken to these people? Have you had advice on how those volunteers could handle, the same way you've got first aiders in the office, could handle cases if they arise? Because if a case arises and everybody runs away, you're not helping also. You're the one who's going to be left there. After all, you're the chief pandemic officer. So you need, and you can't be everywhere on every site. So have you thought about that? And do you have a mechanism of sanitizing the place and isolating? Do you have an isolation room where someone can be taken if they are found to be positive in your site? These are things that we need to think about in the interest of caring for our employees. The other thing is just the advice I was talking about of working from home. There's a lot of resource that you can access and help them. But as I said, most importantly, when people talk about how they are experiencing working from home, then answers begin to come up. What can we do to help with a subject that is very close to my heart and I feel that sometimes is being ignored? What can we do to help with mental wellness during this time? We can talk all we want about desktops, technology, digitalization, headsets, and every kind of hardware. What do we do to help our employees cope with a new life? Being at home, that's very painful for some people, as they say. If you've been used to leaving work very early in the morning and you only come at night at 10 and you sit there 20 minutes and then after the 20 minutes you're going to sleep, and then suddenly you're meant to be in that area for the 24 hours, it's a different kind of scenario. How do you help them? How do you help them work from home? It's a new thing for many people. How do you help them deal with the stress related to quarantine? How do you help them with the fear of not performing, with the fear that the business is coming down, with the fear of losing job, with the fear of not being able to provide for the family, with the fear of contracting COVID-19, with the fear of death? These are real things. There is anxiety, there is panic, there is fear, there is stress, and there is depression. What are you doing? Is your medical service provider the kind that also offers counseling services? At this time, some people need counseling. And people won't just necessarily walk up and say, I need counseling. Sometimes they need to be told that you can talk to somebody. And it always makes sense when you speak to somebody, especially somebody professional who can help you cope. Because we can't remove the virus today, we can only learn how to cope with it. So counseling may help. Opportunities to areas where you, and also HR, your HR department, are you the kind of department where somebody can talk if they want to speak? Besides the resources that you can access online. This is a time when people are reflecting a lot on mortality. They are reflecting on things that are truly important to them now. Being able to isolate what really matters, to identify junk in their lives and prioritize what is best for life and their loved ones. So when they come to you and somebody is asking a nagging question as HR, is this mask 2-ply or 3-ply? Inapitisha. And then they ask you the third time, how do you respond? You need to have the background in mind. These people are stressed. There's another group of people I want to wind up as I wind up to talk about. But before I talk about that group, let me touch on something. I've seen this question on leave being asked a lot. People have taken leave. It's exhausted. I think there are opportunities to take leave in advance. And depending on your kind of employee relations, the way you negotiate with employees, you probably will get further if you've had positive relationships with your employees, because then you can say, take it in advance. Can we negotiate unpaid leave? Can we, and things will evolve as we go on. No one knows how next month will be. I don't know how long this will last. Anybody pretending to give you answers as to what they will do in September joins the man who was on radio, who was saying that he can cure this thing in 15 minutes. I think he is not well himself. The group I was talking about is yourselves, the HR people. How do you look after yourselves? Where do you go? Your MD is coming to you, your senior managers are coming to you, everybody's coming to you, your family is looking at you. Where do you go? Do you have perspective? First of all, I think we need to have perspective. There's nothing in this world, nothing has been faced in the world that has lasted forever. So we don't know when this thing will go, but it will go. It's good to have perspective. And also to remember that far more people are dying of other causes, even today, even now, than are dying of COVID. Now, am I minimizing the impact of COVID? Don't get me wrong, no. But our problems have not disappeared because COVID has come. You are not well because you don't have COVID. If you've been battling with a problem, it's probably just gone into hibernation briefly. It's going to come back. So let's have perspective. Can we possibly see that we also need help? Do you have people that you can speak to? Do you have a caucus that you can share? A cathartic moment where you say what you're thinking and what's bothering you. If you're anxious, do you recognize it? If you're panicking, do you recognize it? When you don't have an answer and your MD is looking at you in the eye and you're anxious, do you recognize that? And when you recognize it, where do you go? Some of us probably need to speak to therapists. Some of us need to speak to counselors. Some of us need to have a caucus that we can speak to, or people we trust that we can open ourselves to. But we shouldn't forget ourselves, because we will not be able to help others if we are not well ourselves. COVID is more than a clinical problem. It is a social problem. Now, as I wind up, I want to challenge us a bit and ask, and I may seem to digress a bit in the last 2 or 3 minutes. What is coming to your mind as you experience COVID at the workplace? Is this some kind of a cosmic stimuli or signal to help us focus and dissect the anatomy of corporate life better, or work as we know it? Do we have to work at such a frenetic pace? Does life have to be this feverish and frantic? What could we do differently? How can we be catalysts of change to inspire others and our businesses to see things a bit differently? It's not all about margins and profits and organizational priorities. What really matters? How might we pursue that? Because we are discovering new things now. We are having longer meetings with ourselves, which is something that is hard to do. When did you last stop and smell a flower? What stops you? When did you last make that call? When did you last laugh out loud? What are you noticing about life now? Most of it has been there, waiting for you to pay attention. These are difficult times, they are distressing times, but as long as you remain alive, and I hope all of us do, we must live and not dissipate in fear. We must not get sucked into the vortex of paranoia and anxiety. Yes, precaution, but not paranoia. These times may be here with us for some time, but they are not permanent. We can endure and inspire others to do the same. So value every moment. It is precious. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred. Indeed, we have to be a catalyst of change to help people see things differently within the business. So we have a couple of questions that are coming through from the members. And one is around having difficult conversations with staff in the wake of COVID-19. Business isn't doing well, salaries need to be cut, or people need to go without pay. How do we handle that, ensuring that we continue to be humane in that conversation?
Let me start by saying that we already have that kind of experience. And the reason I say this is in our own homes, we've got sufficient experience doing this kind of thing. Those who've got children know that they do not have a limit to what they can ask for. A child could very easily ask you for an aeroplane, and they are genuine. How do you deal with that? Many times they could demand something. They might want to go to a school, which you find that is probably not consistent with your budget. How do you deal with that? We have already learned how to deal with that. We need to be firm, but kind. To say that, look at what is happening. If it is not just you as an individual who's struggling, even the business is. The way you are struggling with your cash flow is the way the business is struggling with its cash flow. And being candid is important. It is priceless. Telling people this is where we are. Being forthright, people might forgive you and understand you better. Say, this is our balance sheet. It's looking like this. This is our P&L. It looks like this. These are our cash flows. These are our receivables. We don't have money. We only have so much. This is what we can share. And many times when you are that clear with people and that forthright with people and they know, it helps. If you've been unkind to your people in the past, of course, they'll forgive you much less. And if you appear to hide stuff, then of course you'll find difficulties. But I think we already know. And we need to tell managers that they need to be candid and forthright. This is a time to take courage. Even for performance, managers are afraid sometimes to say that, look, you did not meet expectations. Difficult times have come on everybody. Everyone can see what's happening in the world. So we must take the courage to have these conversations, difficult as they are. And there are always going to be very good benefits from having difficult conversations. Those conversations that we try to avoid are the most important.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question is around employees fearing to come to work because of COVID-19, but then they're required to be present. How are you handling that within your organization? Or what are your thoughts around the handlement of that?
The first thing I have to say is that it is extremely important how leaders show up. I spoke a little about that. If I am not coming to the office because I'm looking after a department and I'm expecting my people to go and look after the others, their colleagues in the office, then already I have failed. I must show by example. So for leaders to show by example, that counts. So that then when you're asking someone to do something, you're telling them, I am as susceptible to this virus as you are. And therefore, it's part of having the difficult conversations and saying that, look, for instance, our MD has been going to various sites. Now, of course, he can't leave Nairobi, but the truth is going to various sites and being with those people, obviously taking every necessary precaution. But the truth is we must show up as leaders and people are likely to follow. The other thing is that if we need to have a difficult conversation with somebody, we will, because how long do they want to work with us? This is the time that you know who counts.
Okay. This is an interesting one. How should we handle disciplinary matters when people are working from home? Do you issue show cause letters over the phone?
Let me give, I am not drawing from academia this one. I'm drawing from experience. During this time, I have dealt with 2 matters, actually 3 matters, disciplinary matters. That doesn't stop. You can still have a virtual disciplinary hearing. You can make it video, you can make it audio, up to you. But we can still draft charge letters. Fraud has not gone away. That's why I was saying that just because we've got COVID, people are living more or less things that were being done are being done. If somebody was planning to steal something, maybe there's an opportunity for them, and we still deal with them. So write the letter, send it, scan the copy, send to the person, invite for a disciplinary committee, a hearing, constitute a committee, they hear it. You do what you have to do. Nothing is stopping you from attending to disciplinary matters.
Okay. I think one of the members has noticed that you sit as a board member, and the question is, just walk us through your experience, being an employee and a board member as well. How are you then providing sort of strategic guidance around the people aspect in the wake of COVID-19?
Now, what it means is that I've got the advantage of ensuring that there's no strategic discourse happening where I do not have an opportunity to say something about people. So I am not being asked to come in after people have made their plans and wanting to execute now and asking, is there some people thing that you want to include here? No, I am not the blue band, I'm part of the bread, if I can put it that way. And therefore, that gives me the opportunity to speak at those levels, at the board level, at the country leadership level, and also at the HR level. So I am part of the discussions, in short. And therefore, that being the case, I know these stakeholders, I've got a relationship with them. So if I need something done, it's not just a position, by the way, and I think people need to distinguish this. You could have a position.
I think you seem to have gone mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you, Fred.
Sorry, I was just saying that being part of those conversations and also, of course, having a meaningful relationship with the stakeholders at those levels is useful, at the board level, at the country leadership level, and also in HR. So the conversations are not held without you, and therefore you're able to put your voice in there and perhaps exert your influence.
All right. So I know we are sort of about to run out of time, but one question that has come through is around talent management. Now, in the last webinar, Dr. Kimgetich talked about, employees finding purpose and perhaps even running their side hustles, and possibly the risk of them not coming back because all of a sudden they've moved from one job to 3 jobs at the same time. So how should we handle talent management, especially for the talent pipeline that we had created, These are people that we don't want to lose within the business. But COVID-19 may present an opportunity for them to seek opportunities elsewhere. So what are some of the talent management strategies that you think we should be looking at as HRBPs or Chief People Officers?
The first thing I want to say is that it's not just the loss. That's one view. The other view is what is available for us as a business now? What are we discovering now? When they start looking for other businesses, we probably begin to see other gems in the office that we had not looked at because we had identified certain people as stars. We begin to see some of the backups stepping up and being so much more useful. So it's not just an opportunity to do business for the stars we have identified. There's also the opportunity for the business to discover stars right where they are standing. So for me, I would say, please, this should not scare people. Again, starting businesses is not that easy. Let's also not assume that everyone, that 30% of your organization is going to go out there and start a business. And especially at this time, it's not that easy. And by the time someone is able to have as much money as they are earning at the workplace, it's not also going to take a few months. So I don't know that this fear is in its right place, because even those businesses they are starting are not insulated from COVID. So I think we need to have a broader view and know that the business also has an opportunity to identify people within, and as much as the people have an opportunity to identify other opportunities that they can pursue outside.
Okay. So 2 days ago, the CS announced cessation of movement within certain counties, so Nairobi being one of them. Organizations were caught flat-footed because all of a sudden you probably have employees working outside of the Nairobi metropolitan area. What would be your thoughts around handling staff members who may be impacted by that cessation of movement and yet are considered frontline staff? So drivers, for example, perhaps those who sit in the reception or provide customer care to staff. What are your thoughts on that?
Rose, just to understand you, you're saying that there are those people who might be on the other side of the country boundary, the newly drawn ones, and you're saying that there's a likelihood that they are not able to come through.
Yes. So should that be unpaid leave? How do we handle them, given that it was a very quick decision that was made without necessarily providing any notice?
Now, one of the things I have to say is we need to still have reasonable conversations with people and say, look, you're on the other side. You can't come this way. I'm not the one who's caused it. So the first place I would start is that you've got to start taking your leave because you're not working from there. Obviously, if it's something that they can do from there, very well. If they can't do it from there, then we have that uncomfortable conversation and tell them that, look, this is what it is. We are not able to do anything different. You've got to start with leave until things relax. Now, if you are in a sector like ours, where you are in essential goods or essential services, then of course you are able to let them come through. But if you are in non-essential services, then it's going to be that much more harder. And you probably now need to think about leave. You start thinking about leave, and if it's exhausted, then you have to think about unpaid leave. You've got to discuss with the employee because you can't also unilaterally just declare or decree that you're going to let them go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Fred, for the insights that you've provided this morning. I'm sure as members and HR professionals, we feel a bit more comfortable in handling some of these situations that are new to us in the wake of COVID-19. So on behalf of IHRM, Fred, thank you very much. It's been a great session this morning, and I'm glad that we have a fellow HR professional sitting at the board and at a very key strategic position within the organization. So please don't tire when we call upon you to share some of your thoughts with the members. so that we can be able to take this engagement forward. As you rightly said, people matter most. So asante sana. Thank you, members, and we look forward to the next webinar, which will be next week on Wednesday, 17th of April at 10 a.m. We'll be having Advocate Steve Ogola, who will be sharing his thoughts on the impact of COVID-19 on employment law, OSHA, and what that means for us with regards to HR compliance. So we look forward to that session, and thank you very much all for attending. Have a great weekend, keep safe, and God bless. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much.